28 Years Later was just released this weekend and reunites Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, who both directed and wrote the first film, 28 Days Later. The story this time around follows a group of survivors of the rage virus live on a small island. When one of the group leaves the island on a mission into the mainland, he discovers secrets, wonders, and horrors that have mutated not only to the infected, but to other survivors. As a fan of both previous films, 28 Years Later has finally arrived and is one of my most anticipated films of the year. I even mentioned it in previous videos. Now, what I loved about the world building from Danny Boyle and Alex Garland is that there's this town on an island that's protected by this tide that keeps them separated from the mainland. And when our characters go to explore to the mainland, it really does feel like they're in infected territory, and they throw so many ideas and concepts at the wall, especially with the use of sound. Like when the father, who's played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who's also really good in the movie, and his son march off to the mainland, you hear the audio that was also the audio in the trailers, which is the poem Boots, and it's cutting back and forth from like battle footage and even footage from one of my favorite scenes in 28 Weeks Later, which was the sniper rooftop scene. Now this is where I feel like the film is its strongest, because you have the dad and son out in the woods hunting zombies. The kid gets his first kill and it hits the zombie in the neck, and you know how zombies make their noises. The kills too were also cool. Every time they would hit them in the head with like their bow and arrows, the camera would do like this weird like spin. I think that's what that rig with the iPhones was all about, which I will talk about in a little bit, but it would go something like this. Now let's see if my chair will help me do this effect. Felt like something out of Mortal Kombat. At the core of it, it does feel like a coming of age story with what I would consider our lead character Spike, who was portrayed really well by Alfie Williams, and how children can discover and overcome truths about their parents and come to the fact that they're not perfect and that someday they will have to protect themselves, even if it means being in a world full of flesh-eating zombies. Now, like how I mentioned in previous videos whenever I would talk about these movies, is how terrifying the zombies are. And I love the new ideas they came up with of how they evolved over the last couple of years, introducing us to the concept of alphas, kind of creating a system among themselves. Like there's these really disturbing moments in the film where it would cut to like this red night vision where the alpha is ripping deer heads off and they're all eating flesh, and it's just disturbing. But what the film does is that the film is structured to include both parents in both half of the movies. Like I mentioned, the first half is really its strong point because that's where the dad and son are like hunting and there's actually zombie chases and a whole bunch of action that's intense. Whereas the second film, the son marks on to find this doctor with his mom to find a solution because she's very sick. Now, like how I mentioned earlier, you probably heard that this film was shot on iPhone with expensive enhancements. It's not like they just grabbed their iPhone out of their back pocket and was like, hey, let's shoot a movie. They built this semi-sphere-like rig designed to make that dolly-like effect that I mentioned earlier. You could tell by the low light in certain scenes that it looked a little foggy, but the scenes that took place in broad daylight in the wilderness when they're being chased down by hordes of infected looked incredible. There's even a really intense scene that takes place on a train where Spike is getting chased down by one of those alphas. And it was actually pretty terrifying, especially since he just had finished ripping up the spine and head of one of the soldiers that was previously in the film earlier on. Which kind of sucked at the same time because he provided a lot of comedic relief, only to end up as a skeleton tree decoration. There was also surprisingly a lot of artsy, emotional type scenes with the score and the cinematography when one of the alphas is chasing the dad and son when they're making their way back to the island. And then you see the sky and it's all colorful. This was close to being my favorite film out of the entire franchise. As heartfelt as it was, it felt very abrupt and unsatisfying. I had more questions than answers, but I think they're setting up for a sequel, obviously. But it feels like the film ended midway into the story without giving us a proper conclusion in that third act. And I was just let down by that. When the movie ended, I was like, wait a minute, that's it? There's still 30 minutes to an hour we need to see. But I will say this, Boyle and Garland have a unique approach to this film or films if they plan on making more after this, to where the story is kind of writing itself and makes us as an audience process the information that we're given, making us want more. And I'm sure when the story concludes, I'll probably look back at this film and appreciate it much more. That's all I have to say about 28 Years Later, guys. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. Did you watch it? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you guys as always for watching. I look forward to bringing out more videos pretty soon. Don't forget to subscribe and like. I'm Matt, and I'll see you guys in the next video.